Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to today's session on CodeSpaces. Apologies for the link. We updated the link just shortly, so we added it on Meetup. So hopefully everyone can join within the next minutes before we start. So today's session will be presented by Rory Preddy for the Reactor community. And as you probably know, the reactors are local hubs for technical learning where developers and startup professionals can connect and build new skills on Azure and open source technologies. We offer a diverse mix of hands-on workshop, expert panel discussion, and community events in all of our reactors globally. Due to COVID, our space is currently closed, so we focus more on online events such as today's session. Before we start, I wanted to let you know that the session is recorded and you will be able to view the recording on our YouTube channel. I will also add the link to the direct event in the Meetup chat. I wanted to also let you know that you can ask any questions that you have and place them in the Q&A section, and Rory will take the time to answer those at the end. Lastly, it's a great opportunity for you to share your feedback with us. So I will share a link for the event survey for today and the event code. It will be great if you can dedicate 2 minutes of your time to complete the survey. That will be very helpful. I think that's all from my side. I'm going to pass it on to Rory now to kick off today's session. So Rory, over to you.
Thanks, Mariah. Hi, everyone. Live from sunny South Africa. We're going to do some really interesting technical work on CodeSpaces. And I'm going to do a nice demo, very light on slides, and then we'll take some Q&A. So first of all, hopefully you can see me, you can hear me, you can see my video. It's what I like to call the quarantine dance, where you can say, can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you see my slides? And eventually someone pops up and says, yes, I can. So who am I? I'm Rory Preddy. I'm based out of Johannesburg, speak across the world if I could actually travel. But I'm doing this from my home office and at my personal residence. You can follow me at Rory Preddy. I do 50% programmer humor and 50% Microsoft updates. I like to keep it light and also very informative. What are we going to discuss today? So first of all, we're going to go through what is a code space. And I'm going to kind of take away the myth, the legend, the auspice around code spaces. We're going to touch a little bit on securing your environment and creating your environment with configuration. And then finally, we're going to do a demo where I'm going to show you some live dev containers that I've created and then integrated with DevOps, because this talk is all about DevOps and how you can drive your DevOps tool chain from CodeSpaces and a little tricks of the trade on how to actually use your CodeSpace as your dev container for DevOps. That's a really exciting exercise I'm going to show you how to get started with. And I've got 45 minutes. Mariah said I've got 45 minutes and we've got 15 minutes for questions. I might not take that long, but let's see how we go. And then we can take some questions. So the trends today. We've got 4 trends I want to discuss: microservices, open source and inner source, distributed teams, and time to market. So first, let's address microservices, a hot contender topic that, people kind of say microservices are dead, functions are the new service, serverless are the new serverless. I get that nearly every day of what happened to microservices. And the thing is that they've always really existed all the way back through, RPC, remote procedural calls. And they're just, a microservice is just another mechanism that you can call a function, a process running on another server. That's it. And microservices are still around. They still kind of didn't slay the monolith. And we're starting to see a kind of a maturity around microservices. People aren't seeing them as a gimmick. They're actually acknowledging that they have a purpose. They have a place. They're not the end all for all technical solutions. And the monolith is still necessary in circumstances. And we're seeing a trend now, especially with this remote climate, this COVID climate, that they're starting to become more prevalent again. And then we've got source control, distributed teams, Git. People fought it for a long time around Git, like, oh no, Git's not the bee's knees, there's better things out there. But I think that everyone's come to the realization that there is my source that I keep on my PC that I maintain, and then there's yours, and then there's the different remote repositories that we can also engage with. And it's given the democratization of source control between having my inner source and your source to be able to understand, wait a second, I no longer have to just pull everything. I can choose what I want to actually engage with and fetch. And this is really a democratizing of the source control paradigm. Then I've got distributed teams. The fact is that I'm talking from my home to you over this. We're a team. We're a team and we're doing something distributed. We're doing a learning exercise. We are a team and we're distributed. And we're seeing this as the new normal. I recently ran a hackathon for 3,000 individuals as part of the Middle East and Africa developer audience engagements. And one thing that came up more than more is that people are battling with distributed teams. They miss the engagement, they miss the water coolers, and they want the ability to really do better collaborative and to have that human engagement, that human touch, and to also be able to code without kind of without pain in a distributed way. And we're going to show you today how to actually do that. There are other technologies that we can touch on, live share, being able to collaboratively engage with developers, but we'll touch on that very briefly. And then finally, always business as usual, time to market. And what does time to market mean? That whereas before, I come from a banking industry environment where we would deploy once a season. I would say to them, when can this field change go into the database? And they would say, it's winter now, summer. But time to market now, Microsoft deploys it 163,000 times per day. And there no longer is that ability to say seasonal, it is per day, per hour. And you need the ability to actually have your environments to be able to spin up and spin down quickly. I once joined a team that took me 2 weeks to create my environment. It was a Java 1.3 with and everyone looked at me and they said, Rory, this is the fastest that anyone has set up this environment. Prior to this, they took months and you've taken 2 weeks. And I felt like a champion. But I'm going to show you a way how to create an environment in 30 seconds. The time to market has changed. We need the ability to become more agile. Development doesn't have to be a pain. It is a pleasure when you have an environment and a tool set that doesn't actually take your attention span away. Anything more than 30 seconds, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to get that Zoom fatigue, and I don't want to do that. I want that time to market both for development. So let's start our discussion around CodeSpaces, around what is a dev environment. Let's give you a background to that. So typically your dev environment contains quite a few number of components. We're going to go through those components and discuss each one. So first of all, your code editor. There are some code editor wars, the Emac, Sublime, VI, and I'm not going to get into that because those guys are dangerous. But your editor is a simple process. It just monitors your text. It has sometimes intelligence like we have in Microsoft IntelliCode, and it kind of just edits your text, and your text then would be compiled or interpreted, and it would run on your process. These editors can come in many different flavors. You should be able to personalize it for the font, the color, and that's one of your key components to your editor. Then we have the source control, and that is when I change from source control, I want to do it inside my dev environment. I don't have to go outside to my dev environment and run a command there, even though there are multiple mechanisms that you can use to use tools outside your dev environment. I still want the option, but not the obligation, to run my source inside my dev environment and get notifications and alerts and about issues, PR requests, and stuff that is prevalent to me. I have runtimes. Even though this is a very small little icon, this is a very important icon. The first time that I ever got involved with Visual Studio on Visual Studio Code was when I discovered the power of runtimes. Now, what Visual Studio Code did is that Microsoft, in collaboration with other industry leads, created something called the Language Server Protocol. Go look that up. Incredible technology. What the Language Server Protocol did was it said that when I run a process inside my IDE, I don't actually want to run it inside my IDE because that's going to slow my IDE process down. I want to run it outside my IDE in something called an off-process language server in a runtime. So when I run Java, Python, .NET, I actually run it and the operating system spins up my environment in whatever language and runtime I have, and then starts to create my runtime. And now my IDE sends JSON to that language server protocol, and the language server protocol passes what I'm trying to do and sends it back to the IDE. If the language server kind of collapses or changes, or I need to swap another language, all it does is just spins up another language server protocol. And when I saw this happen, I thought to myself, wait a second, this can run on another server. And I got it actually running at that time. It was 3 years ago, running on another server. And the entire glass ceiling of remote development changed for me because I realized that remote development was going to be distributed eventually, because I no longer had to have my PC running that exact environment. I could run this somewhere else. And so, yeah, runtimes. Then we've got the debugger, you know, F5, F6, F7, step into, step out to, step over, the classic debugger paradigm. And you want to debug inside your dev environment. You also want to debug remotely. We're going to get to that now. So wherever you are, even if you're running with a remote runtime, a Java server running on a server, you want to run this on a remote runtime and debug. And we can do that now, and I'll show you how to do that. Then we've got packages. So I want to run my npm Maven, and I want to get them into my package, create my packages also, and I want the editor to reflect those packages and import them automatically. Tooling, and I like to speak to students when I say tooling. Tooling's like an app. You've got an Android phone, an iPhone, and you want to install a new tool, you just install an app. And it's the same with extensions. With tools, that you can just install a tool or an extension and it just magically appears in your dev environment. Then we've got terminal, bash, PowerShell, command line, and we've seen a new kind of revigoration in the Windows environment with WSL, that now you can run your terminal and you can do all of these things with the feel of Linux inside your Microsoft environment. We've got extensions, which I briefly covered, and extensions are different to tools. So extensions might be a tool, but extensions are something else. Extensions are your apps, because extensions also now come in two flavors. You get your local extensions running on, and I've got a Mac laptop. Then you get your remote extensions running on the server that is running your remote runtime. Yeah, I know, mind blown. And your extensions, your remote extensions, are just a JSON server that is sitting there, that is just sending you information. So it's not that black magic-y kind of wonder, because it really is just a server running in the background. Finally, we've got config. And config now, if I install an IDE and I run a runtime, is stored in Git. The state of your IDE is stored in Git, because I need some way to actually say, this is where I left off and where I want to go, and all your config is actually stored in Git. So what is CodeSpaces, and how can that actually help you solve all of those problems, and what does it bring to that? So there's four main characteristics. Managed environment for any project. If I've got a team lead or a manager and he says, spin up that environment, he gives me the environment. Or I can create it and tell them, please go check in their environment. And you want a fully managed on-demand dev environment that dramatically reduces setup and maintenance. 30 seconds, one to environment. I'm going to show you in the demo how to do that. Feel at home, even when away. With GitHub and with my settings, I can actually sync them across multiple environments. So whether I'm working on my PC or my a laptop or at home or in the cloud, I want all my settings to propagate to the environment that I'm working on there, and they can be auto detected, configured, and Git identity roamed, so the experience looks and feel as local. Third one, develop from anywhere. Connect from anywhere, Visual Studio Code, browser-based companion editors, and I even did it via my phone yesterday. I started up a dev process, a DevOps process, and I ran an entire DevOps process with my Samsung Galaxy A50, and I coded on my phone, but a full environment running 4 gigs of RAM and 2 CPUs, but remotely. And it's really from anywhere that you can actually start to develop. And then finally, supercharged collaborative development, fully collaborative environment, complete with AI-assisted development support with live share, and my teams can now exist anywhere. So introducing CodeSpaces. And notice that one thing I haven't said Visual Studio CodeSpaces or GitHub CodeSpaces, because I like to refer just as CodeSpaces, because there is now a transition from that we're kind of advocating from Visual Studio Online, aka CodeSpaces, to GitHub CodeSpaces. So from today, we're recommending you to sign up for the CodeSpaces, the GitHub CodeSpaces beta. I'm going to show you the demo that we're going to do in GitHub CodeSpaces, and I'm going to refer to it going forward in this demo as CodeSpaces. So what is CodeSpaces? It exists inside Compute, cloud-based inside the GitHub ecosphere, and it really is, you can have multiple different code spaces, and you have your compute, which is your VM that you're running on top of. Then you have your network, which surrounds your VM, that kind of intercepts changes and input and output ports going into your VM. Then you have your storage that your VM sits on, and these are configured and edited and engaged with your Visual Studio Code in your browsers. And you can run up to, in the current GitHub beta, up to 2 of those cloud-hosted environments. Let's go through compute, and that's the image that you're running on. So there's 4 main characteristics. You have cloud-hosted; they're hosted in the cloud. Virtual machine isolation; you're still running a VM. So you're running your configuration on top of a VM, and your VM is really a Docker container. You've got a Docker container running on Visual Studio, and you've set up your Visual Studio. Then you've got your environment customization, and we're going to go through a demo then. And you can customize your Docker image. You can open up ports. You can run certain apt-gets to configure your Linux, or even run Windows containers. Composed environment, you can even use Docker Compose, and that is coming up a little bit later in the timeline. So network, no public IP address, and they relay. So you can see there on this example here, number 2, no inbound traffic, and they use a relay. So what happens is that you actually say, please let me access this VM with this port, and it will go and create a hash representation of your container, send you that hash representation secure, and it will give you, in that instance, at that moment, the ability to access that VM via that hash relay. Very secure and really magical when I show it to you. And then connected clients. So you eliminate the intrusive change to firewall and network infrastructure. If you have a network admin there saying that it's not actually secure, this is more secure than me running on my laptop. It's running inside an isolated VM. On storage, you've got the source of truth from your VM. So when I make a change and I have my environment, I know that I'm pulling it from the environment my team lead or my manager set up, and it's a single source of truth on the storage that I've set up. Dedicated storage has its own dedicated and isolated storage account, and then encryption at rest, so you know that it is secure. Your config, so we use GitOps now, meaning that Git creates your environment, which is going to create your actual Docker container, and then we use something called a dev container. And your dev container is how we configure your Visual Studio environment. So it will say forward ports, the image you're going to use, the Docker file, the container user, and dev container is a nice way to use your dev.json or your launch.json, and it sets up everything for me, and that's stored in Git, and this is really called GitOps, meaning that we're driving our environment, our setup of our system, and we go one step further, because I'm going to show you in the demo how we can do DevOps with the same container, the Docker container, and the environment that we're running inside our code spaces, and deploy that to production. So I have single source of truth for my environment, because it's the same environment that I dev on that I'm deploying to production. I'm going to show you with Azure DevOps how I actually got that working. It's pretty nifty. So that's the demo. So not too bad, 20 minutes of slides, and we're going to go through. So in the demo, I've got a nice little script that I've got running in front of me that I want to show you. So the demo really has 4 steps. So we've got the setup. I'm going to show you how to run and set up an environment. Then we've got the local environment. So once I've got my environment in CodeSpaces, I'm going to show you how to connect to that locally, so I can switch that off and go and take my laptop and even have low bandwidth. Then I'm going to discuss a little bit more about dev containers, and then also I'm going to show you some code spaces and how to get started. Okay, so let's get out of PowerPoint and let's go into the project that I want to show you. Now, let's make it bigger. And Mariah, if you can't see this, or if you want me to increase this, okay, so that should be bigger. And I've got a function app. So we're going to build a function app. And the function app is pretty simple. And if I click on the function app here, it just is, it's a hello world function app here. And the function app is, let's go command space. And if the function app just says pass your name, let's go there we go, and it just says hello Rory. You pass it in the parameter name and hello Rory. And I want to develop this app and I want to run this locally on my Macintosh laptop and also in a code space. So I've already set this up. And I've got a nice .NET example because I realize that you .NET developers want an example also. So I'm going to show you the DevOps example all in .NET Core. So I've got my environment set up here. Let me make it bigger. We're going to go through this. And I've got my it's Rory P function VS Online that I've set up. And you can see I've been running this pretty long now. It's already 2 months that I've been kind of running this. And this is forked off from this repository here, Microsoft VS Code Dev Containers. And if I go into here, that we actually provide as Microsoft VS Code Dev Containers, a dev container for nearly every single environment. So I go into containers, and if you wanted to run Alpine Linux, Ansible, blockchain, Java functions, .NET Core, Python, Bash, Dapper, Docker Compose, Go, JavaScript, Node, Mongo, Jekyll, Puppet, Python 3, Ruby, TypeScript, all of these have these Docker containers ready for you to use. And all you do is you copy the dev container folder into it, and you just you create your repo. And in my dev container folder here, I really have 2 files of interest. Don't worry about the Maven settings. I have a Docker file. In the Docker file, pretty simple. It just says from that image there, Azure Functions, Java core tools, and then it could actually install other toolings. I don't have that there, and it could also open up other ports if I wanted to. And then that Docker file then really is referenced by the dev container.json. The dev container.json installs the Microsoft Java pack, or when we do the .NET one, the .NET one, it opens up the port 7071 because I'm running Azure Functions, and that's where the Azure function is stored. And then it uses the remote user's VS Code here and ensures that I have the correct version. That's enough for me to run my environment. Obviously, I've got a sample project here, and the sample project is that HTTP Hello World example. So how do I start my code spaces? You'll see here with GitHub code spaces, I've got a little folder there saying code spaces, but more importantly, and that's something that I'll show you later, I've got a little code button here, and code there, I can drop it down. Remember, this is a public beta, you can sign up, and I've got open in code spaces. I don't have anything running on this profile now. It says no active code spaces. So let's go create one, and this should take about 30 to 40 seconds. And what it's going to do first, it's going to build my Docker image, and then it's going to go into my dev container.json and start to configure my system. So I'm going to narrate as it's doing that opening code spaces, and I'm going to talk a little bit about exactly what it's doing. Now, by default with the beta for GitHub code spaces, you get 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. When they had the Visual Studio Online, there was also an option to get 8 gigs of RAM and 4 CPUs and Windows dev containers, but this is just in the public beta. You get up to 2 of these containers also. So I already have another one running the .NET one, and I'm going to create one, bravely with the Java one. And you can see there the build container. It's already downloading the Docker image, download complete, verifying, checksum, and it's building my environment right now. It's building my Docker container for my Visual Studio to run, Visual Studio Code to run on top of. And it's going to take about 30 to 40 seconds. And once I have that, I should also, because it's using Git, it's going to clone the Git repo onto my Docker image, and I'll have the Azure function running and the project already checked out. Now it knows who it is. So if it picks up changes, it will actually say you running changes local to the same repo that you have. That's not to say that I couldn't create this locally off a dev container and then git clone some other container. You could actually do that. But in this example, my dev container and the project I'm using is the exact same project. And you can see they're starting CodeSpaces. I'm not too sure how long that took, about 30 seconds. And then it's going to connect. Now this is still in my browser, and you can see there. And it's now at the bottom there, it says opening remote, and it's connecting to the Docker image that I just created, and it's going to start running the dev container.json to start to configure my environment, install Java, install Maven, run any settings that I may have. You can see here, let's go into, yeah, that was pretty fast. Let's just make sure I've got the right version here. CodeSpaces. That was very fast, actually. You know, it always makes me smile. And then we go, okay, cool, Java projects, always important Maven. That's it, my environment's created. And I've got my Java function. And if I wanted to, okay. If I wanted to now debug, Rory, are you telling me that I can debug within a minute? Yes, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to my run settings, and this is the run settings for the Java function toolkit that runs it locally, and I'm going to click on attach to Java function. It's going to run Maven now, and it's going to download all my packages, and when it runs Maven, you'll see how fast it is, because the package manager is on the core of the Azure pipe, the backbone, and it's incredibly fast. Watch this. It's going to run Maven package, and it's just going to go, and if everything works fine, it's going to import all those packages there in lightning speed, because you're in the internet. You're not only coding in the internet, but you're in the core of the Azure data center, running as close to the internet as you can kind of get. Then it's running the little unit tests that I got there, and downloading all those internet. And once you run this, obviously it's going to be quicker next time you run this. So I put a breakpoint on the Azure function here. You can see there, and I want to find when I pass the name in there, I want to find the name that I'm doing. I want it to break, but Rory, you can't break in here because you're running in the browser. How are you going to break? So it's magical. So let me show you. So it's already got the localhost 7071, but how do I access that? I go into my command line and go access. No, you command click through here. So I command click through here, and I should expect, before it actually goes through anywhere, to break on that breakpoint. So we command and click, and it's going to open up my browser there, and you'll see there, it's going to say connecting to the forward port, and it's going to pause here. And what we're hoping will happen is this is going to bring up a little, there we go. Did you see that? It's got a breakpoint in my browser, and I can click through my browser, and I can step over my query string there, and now I can actually debug in my browser. And it's not going to have any query because it doesn't have any name. So we're going to go, and it's going to say, please pass in a name. So I can pass in a name, and we'll debug that again. And I want to go here, question mark, name equals to Rory. I'm going to hit enter. And it should debug again, and now we can go inspect that I passed in the correct name. Yeah, it did. And I got the little red thing there, and then I can step over the query. I can get the query, and I've got now a byte value of Rory. I can debug in a browser. Anyone can debug in a browser. I can give you this code right now, and your manager, your friend, your family, your loved ones can debug in your browser anywhere around the world. And when I first saw this, I thought, there's no way. I remember doing this and driving this and debugging, and I thought, I must have done something wrong. There's no way I can actually debug this, because this is running this server here, and I'm connecting to it on the internet, is actually running your remote extension. So if I stop that there, let's just go. And if I go into my extension, you'll see there that under local installed, there's also a code space installed. So local installed is your extensions that you run on your Visual Studio Code, but CodeSpaces installed are the extensions that are running inside the code spaces. Now you're kind of smelling what I'm selling. Let's go see, once we have that, how you can actually connect to this. I'm going to take that breakpoint off. How I can connect to this. So I'm going to close this. and I'm going to close that. And I've still got my environment here. And now I'm going to go through to my local Visual Studio Code. I'm going to hide that. And this is my Visual Studio Code running on my Macintosh laptop. And there's nothing running here. And I've got my project that I can run locally. And if I go into my project that I run locally, and this is the Git repo, you'll see here that I could run this locally, but the minute I open this, it's going to pick up at the bottom there, the folder contains a dev container configuration file, reopen folder to develop in a container. So now I can run my entire environment running Docker locally. And let's just see how we can go reopen in container. And now this is running in my Docker instance. And to prove to you that this is actually running in my Docker instance, I can go into Docker and I can go my Docker dashboard. And I should see a container there because this is running in Docker, running locally on my PC. No containers running. Don't disappoint me. Let's go. Let's close that. Maybe it took us a second to actually start. Let's just go PS hostname. Yeah, so that definitely is a Docker container. I want to just maybe it took a few seconds to reflect here. I'm going to go Docker dashboard. Okay, well, let's go to Portainer. So Portainer is my Docker kind of management studio, Portainer, and Portainer runs on my port 9000. Portainer is a nice little instance to actually go in and inspect your Docker instance, and you can go see container there, and you can see there I've got my Kubernetes instances. I want to see created. Where are you, and why are you not showing me? I might be running into this. Okay, well, I can't find that actual instance though, but it is running somewhere. Wait, there we go. There we go. I thought I couldn't find it, but there's my VS Code function, and that's running. And now this is running. So I've cloned the repo, the functions online locally here, and now I can actually execute in here because I want to prove to you that this is working. And then there's all the layers of Docker instances that I created. There's Maven, and this is everything that we created in our Docker instance. And I can probably execute a function inside here. We want to go containers. Container. I want to go and find that container. I want to execute a function in my container. There we go. And suspicion. I want to prove to you the host name, connect, user roots. Cool. And then I'm going to go host name. We should see the Docker container. Voila! This is the container that I'm running on my local PC in my dev environment. Now I can actually debug like I would into my function. So I can function there, and then I can go debug, attach to containers. And I'm coding inside Docker now. I'm using Docker container as I did locally on my MacBook. And now I can actually go and connect to my function and debug in my container, which means I can run anything locally as I would Ruby on Rails, Java, Python, all of that, and I can click on that, and it's going to do the same kind of magic that I did port forwarding. I opened up in that folder there, and I want to, and it's got port forwarding. It's working, and I can kind of debug also. So that's the second part of the demo that I wanted to show you, which is running locally. So let's disconnect here. But the novelty really is that I want to connect to the cloud. So I've showed you how to connect in Visual Studio CodeSpaces inside your browser. I've showed you how to use the same repo if I ran it on my Mac and I wasn't connected to the internet, how to run it on my Mac. But my instances are still running in the cloud. Now I can go into CodeSpaces. Let me just make sure that I'm file close remote connection. I want to get into my blank slate of Visual Studio Code Insiders. Then I'm going to go to my remote extensions here, and I'm going to go to CodeSpaces. Now watch this. My functions online is running, and I'm going to connect to it. But Rory, what are you doing? I'm connecting to my Docker instance running in the cloud on GitHub CodeSpaces, and I'm going to run very limited processing on my Mac because everything's going to be remote inside the cloud, and I can now run processes and just get that JSON sent back there. And you can see they're setting up remote connection, connecting to remote hosts, starting remote server. And theoretically, if I go host name, it should say to me, you're running in GitHub CodeSpaces. And we're going to test that now. So what happens when I actually debug my Java function then? How does that work? And we're going to see that, how to do that. So let's first go and open up a terminal and see really where we are right now. So let's go terminal, new terminal. And now I'm on a Macintosh laptop running in CodeSpaces on Linux. I know. Let's try debug. Go to source, main, function, put in my little debug breakpoint there. And I'm going to debug. Now I'm going to debug from my PC, debugging on my PC to a CodeSpace server running in a data center in the United States, attached to Java functions. All seamless, all quick, all magical. And it's going to run it. Remember, it's going to run the tests. It's already downloaded the repo, the packages, so it's not going to need it to do it again. Host function start, it's going to start the function. Now it's going to start the function in the server, not on my local PC, but I'm going to debug to my local PC. So I go there and I command click, and I'm now debugging from my PC into the interweb, and it now, let's get that, I've dropped the browser. I want to go localhost. I want to make this smaller. I'm still learning how to Macintosh. It's been a hairy ride for me. The Windows, I think the Windows have been the most difficult to, and then it's done. I've remotely debugged from my PC to a cloud code server, CodeSpaces instance running in the cloud. And I've done the opposite way around. Remember, I did it in the cloud, then I did it on my PC, then I ran a Docker instance. And you can do all of this all of the time. So let's look at DevOps, because this is all about DevOps. So that's how you can run the instances. But I want to show you. I want to close that. I want to close Portainer, close my functions, because we're going into .NET. Because I know you .NET developers want to have a look here. So I've got a .NET environment that I've created with the starter project for DevOps starter. So how do you do DevOps in Azure? I'm going to show you in 1 minute how to actually create an entire CI/CD pipeline in Azure. And I've got my little project here, and I want to go VS try node. No, I want to go VS try. So these are the try .NET Core. VS try .NET Core. So this is a repo .NET Core that VS try. There we go. That Microsoft has provided. And in this try.NET Core, it's got a dev container and it's got a little sample project there. We're going to use this as our basics for our DevOps starter. I'm running good in time. So I've got my DevOps starter here, and then I'm going to go bring your own code. That's great. I want to do bring your own code. The code repo that I want, GitHub, authorize it to connect to GitHub. Of course, you can do MFA now, GitHub. That's great. And then I think I've actually cloned this. I'm going to tell it to use that as my repo with that dev container, my repo. So I'm going to go try, there we go, .NET Core, master branch. So this is the repo that I'm going to do with everything. I'm going to say select the runtime, .NET, application runtime, .NET Core, next. I'm going to use a Windows web app, next. Project name, I'm going to call this Reactor RPZA Israel, and then the DevOps organization that I already created. My subscription that I'm going to do is the Cloud Advocate subscription. The web app name, that's fine. My Cloud Advocate subscription only really works well in US West 2 for some reason. And then pricing test standard, and then done. And I've got a full CI/CD. It's going to take about 5 minutes, but I've already got it running beforehand. It's going to, that's my CI/CD, and that's all I need to do. Now, what are you saying, Rory? Are you going to actually run your DevOps container off your cloud code spaces off that? Yes, the same instance that I'm going to create my CodeSpaces is the same instance I'm going to create my DevOps container, because I've got it running here, .NET Core CodeSpaces. I created it beforehand. And I've got my entire CI/CD, exactly what we did there before. The development will take a few seconds. Let's go back there. My DevOps starter. And this is just also a hello world example there. You can see there I've got the code, and I did that yesterday. And I build, and then the actual pipeline. And I can click on that, and it basically just says hello world from hello world .NET Core CodeSpaces there. Cool. Let's dev that. Let's dev that and push it and make a change to that, and let's see how we can do it. So how do I dev that? Now I've already kind of created that, or I could actually go in there and go. I have forked it. So if I fork it to Rory P, this container image here, Rory P VS Code try remote code, I can go code, opening CodeSpaces. And it's going to say, oh, you already have it there, and yeah, I've already got it there, and so I'm not going to waste more time because, and I'm going to click on that, and now it's going to go preparing your code space, and it's then same environment that we actually push to production right now with our DevOps instance, though, because it's clever enough to know. Let's go connect. It's clever enough to know the environment and to do that. Now I could actually go one step further and actually run my entire production environment of the Docker container that I'm running in my code spaces. I haven't done that. It's just the program.cs that I'm going to actually be using with the dev container JSON that it's doing. That's one step further that you can actually do that, and that's just also magical. It means that I can run the Docker container in my Kubernetes clusters, my Azure container registry. And I've got immediately you can see here, it's going to build my environment like I showed you before, opening a remote, and we've already seen this with the Java instance here. And I can debug my instance here if I wanted to with my program.cs. We've already kind of seen how that works. I'm not going to show you that, but more importantly, as I've got my built-in DevOps pull requests, my issues that I can actually log and adhere to, and I've got my Git repo here. So I want to make a change. So instead of hello remote world from ASP.core, I'm going to say hello from Reactor, and cool. And I'm not going to test that, and I'm going to go save file, save, and now I'm going to go in there and I'm going to push that there to say Reactor, and I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to push that, pull push, and I'm going to go push. And then we're going to go see how this is going to kick off my DevOps toolchain from the same instance from my DevOps starter. And I'm in the cloud. I'm in the cloud running my DevOps processes. I can get access to my pipelines. I can get access to my issues, my pull requests, my PR requests, all of those things from here. I can go to my .NET CodeSpaces. I should be able to go refresh, and it should say that it's now triggering my entire, just now, my build. I can go into there, my Reactor, and you can see there the build's running, and it's my .NET Core build on Azure DevOps, and it's going restore. This is the same instance that I just ran my dev environment from. It's going to take restore, find out what's new, build, test, publish artifact, post checkout. And this is, remember, this is if you've done a DevOps course or a webinar, this is my my CI pipeline, continuous integration, and it's going to run and create my artifact into my repository. And then once I'm finished with my artifact, and remember, I didn't create any of this. This was out of the box from the DevOps starter. Go have a look at it. Start your DevOps process there using that VS Code try .NET Core, and there's a lot of other repositories that you can actually do. It's running that and post job checkout. Let's go look at the actual pipeline, the release pipeline that we're going to do, and see if we can catch it just before it actually goes there. So we've got my build pipeline, then I've got my dev pipeline here. And my dev pipeline is, well, I've run it before. I've got release 2. Oh, it just did it now. It just did release 3, and it's queuing it up there. Now, the queuing is because Azure Pipeline gives you 1 free Azure Pipeline if you're running in private repos or a private organization. If you're running an open source project, you get 10. And if you want to run an organization, you can buy up to as many as you want. You can also do self-hosted. Yeah, it's pretty economical. So I want to go into my run on agent. You can see there you can manage the parallel job limits. If I wanted to do that, I can go in the manage parallel, and I can purchase parallel jobs if I wanted to. And this is linked because this is an internal repository. I can go there, or I can do self-hosted, Microsoft hosted for public projects. These are private projects, so I can actually purchase those additional parallel jobs if I wanted to. So we want to go to the pipeline, and it's going to queue there. And depending on what I'm running in the background, I think manage parallel. So it's going to queue for an agent. You can increase it there. But let's go back there. I want to show you what this is going to do. The release there, and we're going to close that. So dev, and I want to go edit, and I want to go edit the pipeline. And I want to show you what it does. So the pipeline there, one job, two tasks. It's going to create my app service for me if it's not already created, my Azure subscription, and then I can also use deployment slots I want. Then it's going to deploy the .NET Core DLL that I just created into my develop Azure app services. And if I go into my actual repos there, you'll see that the repo is the .NET Core, the repo that I have. And it's the exact same repo that I created when I set it up on VS Code remote-try.net. Now, we're almost out of time. We can come back to this there, but that's really how I want to finish my demo and go back to my slides. I've shown you so many ways to connect. I've shown you so many different ways of coding, remote coding. If you want the slides, so play from current, you can get all my slides on https://aks.ms/codespaces-java. I put the Java there because, you know, CodeSpaces is already taken. You can also have the QR code there, and you can snap it with your camera right now. You'll watch the recording also. So aka.ms/codespaces-java. Follow me on Twitter. It's always a laugh. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my Twitter profile. So let's go to the next one. You can also, everything I've done with code, with DevOps, that you can actually go in and do the AZ900 exam. So the AZ900, designing and implementing Microsoft Doc solution. You can visit Microsoft Learn. All of the materials there. You can book or not book the exam if you don't want to. https://cda-ms/1bv. And you can get access to all that learning material for DevOps solutions. Exactly what I showed you with the DevOps starters, how to access using your environment, cloning, repos, pipelines. All of that is available via this URL that I've mentioned. And then I'm going to hand over to the great Mariah to give you a little bit more information around the survey link. Mariah, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rory. That was a great session. Before we move on, I just wanted to highlight that we have a few questions. I'm not sure. I think you covered some, but I'm not sure if yes. I think that will be worth just see if there is anything else that we can add. So I'm gonna add them to the screen now. Andrew was asking, is it the same as Visual Studio Code Online? But I think, as I mentioned, most of them I think you answered, but giving you the chance to add any.
Yes, we're on the day of the changeover. So Visual Studio Online is kind of being moved into GitHub CodeSpaces. It's a beta, so things might change, pricing might change, features might change. But if you're familiar with Visual Studio Online, then you're going to be familiar with GitHub CodeSpaces.
Okay. And the next question we had, I think that was actually the middle, and I think you covered that again. So I'm not sure if it will be relevant to answer this now, because that was something that you mentioned, and I believe that they missed that part. So
okay, great.
Yeah, so I think we'll go for the last one, which is, and also I think you discussed this a bit towards the end, how well does the Azure environment integrate into a Mac computer? But if anything to add, that will be, can add it now.
So my biggest issue is not on the Azure environment. That works fine. My biggest issue was Python. I spent my entire weekend setting up Python, last weekend. I spoke in PyCon Australia, and I set up my local environment for Python, and it burnt my entire weekend to a halt. And I really, I'm doing a talk a little bit later for Microsoft Ignite on Python development, and and the process around it. And I was practicing today, and to install on a Macintosh 2.7, Python 2.7 comes built in with it. To install Python 3.8, I had to hack this Mac completely, and I'm so appreciative of now of CodeSpaces and having that story, because to run Python 3.8, I just have to spin up a CodeSpaces environment, and I've got my Python, my Postgres, my Ruby on Rails, all of these environments together without having to really hack my Macintosh laptop.
Okay, I think that was it. So in terms of the questions, so as I mentioned, thank you. I also shared the survey link. So I shared it in the chat box, and we have the event code as well, 11560. These are some of the upcoming events that we have at the Reactor in Tel Aviv, but also broadcast into the global Reactor community during the month of September. And I think that's it also from my side. There are different ways that you can connect with us, so please feel free to reach out. You can write on Meetup during these inside this event Meetup page, or reach out through the Microsoft developer.microsoft.com Reactor, and then the location that you would like to get in touch with. So thank you so much again, Rory, and thank you everyone for attending. We hope you found this session interesting and insightful, and I think it's very relevant since this happened big news happened just this week. So I think that it was a great timing for us to host this session. I will be available for you on the Reactor YouTube channel as well, and we will share the link later. You can also access the Reactor YouTube channel. It should be there by next week. So that's it from my end as well. And thank you, Rory, once again. And goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.